It's a pleasure now to introduce my friend and colleague, Stephanie Pruegel, who'll be taking us on a tour of her garden and fully electrified home. And it's really amazing to me to see what Stephanie accomplished in just a few years, both in her garden and also with getting the gas out of her home. So let me turn it over now to you. I'll stop sharing, Stephanie.
This is going to be about 50-50. I'm going to talk for like 10, 15 minutes about my garden. And then we'll watch a video from the East Bay Green Home Tour that was made in 2021 about my electric features. And since I've added a couple more, so after that, we'll recap those and I'll give you a few more details. I've gardened here in San Leandro for just over 7 years. I bought this house in 2016. It's pretty small. It's only 930 square feet, the home itself. The garden's very large. It's about 6,000 square feet with a front, side, and backyard. And I bought the home specifically because I wanted to get rid of the lawn that was everywhere and put in a native garden. So you see the front yard here converted. And even after 3 years, it was just such a huge difference to go from nothing to what you see here on the photo and more now. This is going around the corner. It's a corner lot, so I have a lot of kind of sidewalk and exposure and a fair amount of space. And right here at the corner, I planted a coast live oak. It was actually the very first plant I put in 2016. And you'll hear a little more about oaks later. Here's a picture a little more into those plants. You saw the nice colors there in the previous photo. There's the yellow woolly sunflower. There's, of course, the California poppy, the bluish flower in the foreground on the right. That's salvia, a sage bee's bliss, and some monkey flowers in the back. Moving to the backyard, here at top left, you see what it looked like before. There was kind of a weird concrete patio that I had to have jackhammered out because I wanted to put in some nice flagstone patio and walkways. And at this point, I want to give a shout out to my friend and landscaper Larry Hulse, who did pretty much all the hardscape in my yard and also helped a lot with the design. He'll also be here at the life garden tour on the 4th. So if you come out, you can ask questions about all that. I wanted to talk a bit about the side strips. Being a corner house, I have a lot of those. And when I first started on the top left, this is what the side strips looked like. People would park on them. They were super muddy. That'd be like these rust forming and collecting water. It's really terrible. But I used large moss rocks, as you see here in the middle, to kind of claim back the space and make them into planted areas. And there's bee's bliss here growing. There's a little more poppy in the background. And on the other side, along the side strip, I planted some street trees. In the foreground, you see here native cherry, and there's a lot of hummingbird as a ground cover. In the next slides, I just want to give you a general sense of just sort of the lay of the land before we get into some plant specifics. Here's actually a picture taken from at the last year's garden tour. A big mound of bee's bliss and a low-growing coyote bush here in the front. And this time of year, of course, a lot of nice poppies everywhere. This is just a couple days ago, the same front view, and one of my favorite plants, the California lilac, the ceanothus. Here, the large bush tree in front. You see my coast live oak that has grown a lot since I planted it. And maybe one thing I like about this landscaping is that you see kind of in the front, there's ground cover type lower plants, and then there's medium size, and toward the back you have like the trees and taller things. I like that kind of design principle. Here in the backyard, you see all the little signs. That's from last year's garden tour showing what these different plants are. And you look at this from the patio that I showed you earlier. And around there, it's kind of lower growing because that's where, you may want to sit with friends. and have a more view into well, the blooming plants and the garden. And toward the back, where you see folks walk on the flagstone path, that's where it gets a little more wild and woolly, and where I have taller plants and denser shrubs, and really want to keep it very wildlife friendly. And so more density helps with that. It's also the taller plants in the back, so you have sort of this feeling of sitting in a nice protected little opening in the forest or something. A couple more pictures here that show the plants a little more. You see the manzanita here on the right. I love manzanitas. They're just such beautifully structured plants. Elderberries in the back, you get height quickly with elderberries. They grow fast and they take pruning really well, very forgiving. And another favorite plant of mine, coast buckwheat here in the front, forms these really nice patches, and you can repeat them to have a little bit of continuity in your yard. And that is one thing I learned. I, in the beginning, just wanted to plant every single plant because I wanted to see what they're like. But really, for design, repetition is sort of this mantra that I've learned over the years. It just makes it look much nicer and more natural, because that is what it looks like in nature. Here's another view into the depth here, going more into my wild area in the backyard. This is a view of the patio, and for me, it's super important to use my yard. I mean, it's for wildlife. That was my very main goal. But for me too, it's my outdoor living room. I really, really enjoy being out there. And I want to show you a couple spots in the yard where I enjoy being. So this is close to the home, so I can bring food out or I can have people over. It's like the main gathering area. But I also have a little patio in the back, way in the back in my jungle area. And I have some Cleveland sage growing there, and it just has the most wonderful smell. And this is, I think, June or July when it's in full bloom. And I do a lot of remote work, and it's just so much nice out in the yard, except the Wi-Fi gets a little weak out there. This is one of my newest additions. I made a little bench out of some scrap wood, some old tree stakes, and sort of an old shelf piece of wood that I had, and it's on a mound. And I want to encourage you to have sort of like features like mounds and maybe sort of a little more up and down in your yard. If you have the space, which I luckily do, it just feels a little like almost like you walk up on a path and then you have sort of a clearing and you sit on a little slightly elevated spot there, and you can look into the yard. I enjoy hanging out there. I'm going to go in the next slides into some plants, just a few more specifics, what I like about them, how I've used them, a few things that you might find useful. Feel free to chat away. I'm not seeing the chat right now, so I can't respond in real time, but other volunteers will, and I will later if possible. So seaside daisy. This is a low-growing plant, not very fussy, easy to get at nurseries. It gets like about 2 feet in diameter when it's happy. It kind of spreads like a little carpet. It's one that's really nice to repeat sort of at front of your border. You see, I have another one sort of in the background on this picture, and a few more to have that repetition. And I find it to be really nice with those native bunch grasses. I love deer grass. Here's two of them. Getting sort of a little bit more into the depth of the border and getting higher, growing in height. And there's the woolly sunflower again. That's also a nice ground cover. The seaside daisy also mixes very nicely with other low-growing plants like the penstemon I have here. That's another favorite plant I wanted to highlight. The one I have best experience with is the foothill penstemon. And it's a keystone plant. You probably know that those are the ones that are especially useful to pollinators and caterpillars as host plants, eating the plants, so there can be butterflies. There's the showy penstemon, this purplish one that gets quite a bit taller, that I also don't have right now because it's pretty short-lived. So it's beautiful, but be prepared that after 2, 3 years, you're going to have to replace it. I want to talk about the coast buckwheat, one of my definite favorites. Here's one that has a bit of a purple flower on one side. It's really one plant, but I think it hybridized a little bit with the red flowering buckwheat that I have. Um, I want to see if I can play this video here. It might be a little jagged. I hope you can see how there's like on each of these flower heads, there's like all these uh, little nectar buckets essentially. And there's a native bumblebee. I don't know which one it is, but she's really busy collecting all the nectar here. Let's move in. I've also seen a beautiful buckeye butterfly on my buckwheat, so they're definitely insect-friendly plants. And this Acmon blue is not on a buckwheat, but his or her caterpillars are eating the buckwheat. So the buckwheat is a host plant for this butterfly that is sitting on a manzanita here. The coast buckwheat for me is a really nice ground cover. I have it in the side strip, crowding out my weeds, really the one effective thing to do that. Here it is a little later in the season when the flower heads turn kind of rusty, which is also really beautiful, and the birds like eating the seeds. And here again, as kind of a little piece of carpet ground cover, how you can use it in your yard. The ceanothus is another favorite. Here's the Wheeler Canyon that I showed you earlier in front of my house. It really comes in a lot of different sizes. Here's a close-up of the beautiful blue flowers and a honeybee approaching. And here she's landed on the flowers, and you see how she's already got her pollen baskets, or whatever you call them, chock full. There's different types. On the left in the background, you see a fairly low growing one. You can really have your pick. This doesn't get much taller than 2 or 3 feet. There's one up the wall that I espaliered up, which works too with ceanothus amazingly. And then there's the tall one that's a frosty blue that gets like very tall, like 12, 15 feet, and is in full bloom right now. And there's even ground cover. So in the side strip, I have this Hearst ceanothus um, clambering up some moss rock. Last favorite plant is that I just want to share today. I love them all, of course, is my oak. Here it is, very young tree, looking very gangly back in 2016. And today it's like, I want to say 15, 20 feet tall. It's starting to develop this really nice branch structure that you can see, especially when you look on the inside of the oak and how gnarly those big branches are. So really beautiful plant, always full of birds and bugs, and it's the top keystone plant here in California or in the Bay Area. I also have a little baby coast live oak as a street tree. They make actually very nice street trees. And I'm checking the time and kind of hustling along. I have a few pictures of my wildlife, which I'm just going to kind of scroll through so we get through them, but I wanted to give you an impression. Cleveland sage, always great magnet for butterflies, bumblebees. And here on the left is the caterpillar of the western swallowtail butterfly. This is a photo Kathy took with her amazing macro lens, which you should ask her about. And this pipevine swallowtail butterfly that needs the Dutchman's pipevine. So host plant, that's the only plant it can eat. So essential to have that in your yard. Has super cool flowers, and both the caterpillar and the butterfly are amazingly beautiful. Of course, the monarch, this big caterpillar on one of my showy milkweeds, and then the butterfly on the flower. This is a spotted skipper on a California aster, also super keystone plant asters. And I even saw a dragonfly show up one time. Little skippy on the left. I often don't see the caterpillars, but I did find a geometrid moth caterpillar on my native sunflower. And hard to see because it's so well camouflaged. These are slender salamanders here in the middle of mulch. I moved a rock and they were under it. So I have some piles, have some um, uh, stacked rocks or branches. You'll get some of these guys moving in. Some amazing birds, orange-crowned warbler and the scrub jay and the little Anna's hummingbird. And if you wonder how I can be such a bird whisperer that they'd like fly right up to my hand, I actually had some researchers in my yard a little while ago, and they used mist nets to capture and then release birds. And so some were in there, and we got to photograph them. Here's a hooded oriole and a Townsend warbler that I spotted one time. And that's it for my wildlife. There's so much more, but I just don't have enough time to share it with you. You have to come out. You'll have to come to my tour and you'll probably see them live. Quick glimpse at my water catchment system. I have three 1,000-gallon rainwater catchment tanks, so 3,000 gallons, and they fill up without doubt every year, even drought years. You'll see a little more about them in the video that we're going to start. That's the East Bay Green Home Tour. So we're moving to the green home features now. I'm going to stop sharing and ask Jessica to run that video.
Hi there. My name's Stephanie Pruegel and I live in San Leandro, close to downtown. This house is a 1946 house and I've lived here for 5 years. And I'd love to show you my green features, so come on in. So I want to talk a bit about the bigger idea here, and I've been really troubled about the environment and habitat loss especially, and in a way what we try to do is just be less bad. So what I wanted to do is really like do something good, like give back in a way, and my yard, that was the main reason I bought this house, because as you can see, the house is pretty small, has a large yard. It was all dead grass and weeds, really not much happening, bunch of sparrows, and I've turned it into a wildlife garden, and now I have a lot of different species coming here. I see a lot of insects. I really feel like it's added to what was there before. And you know, with the house, it's sort of similar. I mean, I'm trying to get as close to net zero kind of impact as possible, and trying to, with the solar, you know, use my own electricity and also simplify so it's not so much in the first place. And I have to tell you, it's really empowering. It doesn't feel like a sacrifice at all. So I want to show you the heating, the space heating I changed. I have here my old wall heater, gas wall heater that a lot of you probably recognize. It's not in use anymore, but I wanted to show it because it's like a museum of the bad old days. And I actually got an electric heat pump. It's a mini split ductless heat pump, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. I have 2 units, indoor units. So one is over here. They're both sort of at the ceiling, and one in another room, and the exterior unit is outside in the yard. And I really like this a lot because it puts out continuously warm air that has time to blend with your indoor air, rather than the old unit that would just like heat up fast. The heat would just go right under the ceiling and then it would cool off again. So this being very low electricity use, I can leave it on and it just creates a much more comfortable heat indoors. And it also cools. So this is my bedroom, and I don't have any heating in here. I like to sleep kind of cooler at night, but I do have a ceiling fan for some nights that are a little hotter, and then I can turn that on. So my bathroom's really small, and I didn't want a whole heating unit in here, but sometimes, you know, in the morning it is really cold. So what I have in here is a sort of a convection regular space heater. It's really cool. It's flat. I actually got it used on Craigslist, and it has very low voltage, so it doesn't use a lot of electricity, but it is just convection. And because I just need it in the morning, I actually got a little smart plug where you can basically, it's like setting a timer on an app. And so I set it to start warming, say 6 in the morning. When I get up at 7, it's kind of toasty, but the rest of the day, then I don't really need it. So that way I also get a warm bathroom. So I wanted to talk a little bit about consumption also in terms of energy savings, because all the stuff we buy, you know, there's like all this embedded energy and all the resources. So I'm big on that, and it has become kind of a lifestyle. Like I just think about, well, I want an item, can I get it used? Do I really need it? Can I get it without packaging? So on those notes, I just wanted to show a couple of things that I've come to really like, especially around preventing extra packaging and disposable plastics. So I have my little plastic bag dryer here, and you know, these freezer bags, they're really sturdy. There's no reason not to use them more than one time. So I just rinse them with when I do my dishes, and I have them dry here. So that's been really handy and cheap and easy. And if you come around, I also want to show you another thing I actually got from a friend. It's a second-hand yogurt maker, and I make my own yogurt, and so I don't have to have all those plastic cups that, you know, with the recycling is very questionable, and also save a bunch of money. So welcome to my garage. This is actually where the battery lives for storage for the solar that you saw earlier. And this is the solar inverter. And we're gonna move over to my electric hot water heater, heat pump water heater. And I'm happy to say that I actually got pretty big rebates for that one. So here it is. It's pretty much as large a tank as the old gas water heater was, and has the heat pump in here, and it also stores hot water. I have to say, zero difference in user experience to what it was before. Always have hot water, no problem, but much lower electricity. This is where the cold air gets discharged out. So this is my clothes washing machine. It's an Energy Star and a front loader, and it has very low water usage and electrical usage, and I really like the front loading because it's much more gentle on the clothes. And now we're gonna go check out my dryer. So over here, this is my dryer. Here's my rainwater catchment system. I have 3 tanks, each is 1,000 gallons, and they're daisy chained together, and you can't see it because there's a lot of stuff sitting there, but basically from only part of the roof, it comes down through the gutter. There's sort of a first flush that takes out the dirty water and then funnels into the middle tank, and as it fills up, it fills all the tanks simultaneously. So right now, I hear how full they are. They're almost full, and so I have 3,000 gallons of water that I harvested over the winter for my big yard. So over here you see how I'm actually using the water. I have a hose attached, and the white pipe in front is the overflow, and the pump you see in the back there is just a small 1.5 horsepower pump to get the water all the way into the back of the yard. So let's take a look at my smart panel here, the span. And here's what everybody has, the circuit breaker panel, and the span panel replaces this. So I have a battery storage for my solar energy, and with this panel, instead of a regular circuit breaker panel, I actually have a lot more flexibility in terms of where my energy goes. So my priority is to use as much of my own energy as I can. So I load shift, which means during the day when there's sunshine, I charge my battery and then I use it at night, and of course also during blackouts. But with the smart panel, each circuit is its own thing on an app that comes with this smart panel, and I can direct what I use. So for example, I have certain circuits set for a blackout situation. Say there's no grid, I only use my battery, and you want to be very conservative with the available electricity, right? So you only use certain circuits like the fridge, your router, your garage door. But with the span panel, I can change that in real time. It tells me, oh, you have 80% battery, you'll be good for your important circuits for 2 days. Now say I know it's just going to be a day. Oh, I can add the hot water heater, for example. And so it just gives me a much better flexibility to traffic control my own electricity. And it also helps me know exactly how much stuff uses. It tracks everything. And we're going to show you a couple screenshots to see what the app looks like. And I just have to warn you, if you get this, you're going to spend a lot of time on your app because it's fascinating. So thanks so much for visiting and checking out my green home. And I just want to encourage you to embark on that journey to get fossil fuels out of your lifestyle. And I hope you got inspired. It's certainly been very empowering for me, and I'm happy.
That was such a great video. We're going to let Stephanie take it back again.
Yeah, that's right. I need to share. And sorry if for some folks the quality wasn't that great, but this is a good opportunity to say that I have a page on Kathy's Bringing Back the Natives tour page, and Jessica put the link in the chat. And that video and a bunch of other videos that I made about my yard or that others have made are on there. So you can binge watch. Just kidding. Anyways, I wanted to get a bit more into some aspects that weren't mentioned. And I also now have an induction stove. So I've added some green features since that video was made in 2021. And I wanted to share some information about whom I hired, cost, rebates. But quick caveat, a lot of the incentives landscape has changed and is changing, but we'll get to that in a moment. We have a lot of resources for you where you can find out what you can get now for your situation and all of that. So quick recap. So the house, older house, 46, no ducts, just one floor, pretty small, has a crawl space and an attic. And when I bought it, there was no installation. The only good thing was really double pane windows that they had put in, but everything else was gas, the heater, the hot water heater, and the stove. So before I cover the different features, I want to say my cost is just a rough guide for you because every house is different and incentives, as I said, are changing. Many of you have heard about the Inflation Reductions Act. It's not yet those incentives, which are rebates or prebates, basically money in hand, not a tax credit, aren't available yet. It will be a while until they are, until next year. But right now, there's a federal tax credit. It's 30%. When I did it, it was only 26. So you got a leg up here, and a lot of state and local rebates. So a long list of resources that we'll cover in the end in detail when it makes more sense. But Jessica's going to paste them into the chat just so you know you have them and you can refer to them when there's the time. And I also made a little fact sheet. So again, that page on Kathy's website, you can download it. It's a PDF and has sort of, in a nutshell, what I'm going to share in the next slides. I want to give a shout out to energy assessments. This was the very first step I took, was really cheap. Like I think I paid after the rebate only like $200 for it. And what you see in the picture is kind of a measuring tool they put in your door and they suck out air from your house and they measure it and they see how leaky is your house. So how much air can you even pull out, which tells you how drafty it is. And that's really important because then you know where you have to insulate. And you should really insulate before you do anything else, like or weather stripping, air sealing, all of that is the same thing. It really means just like making your home less prone to leaking warm air that you use a lot of energy to heat up in the first place, right? Or cool air. So in my case, there was a big gap under the door. And all we had to do is kind of put a door sweep to just block that air from, blowing in and out. And then say sealing cracks in the floor and the attic before you put insulation in. So it's really common sense stuff. There's a fair amount of money available in rebates for this. My situation, it was $550 or so. Over half was covered by a rebate. But again, mileage varies depending on your home. So solar panels in 2021, I got my system. Here are a few specs about it and whom I used. I got, in the end, I paid about, what is it? I have to move my window, short of 12,000 after the tax credit that I got. That was comparatively cheap, I want to say, compared to the battery. I got both at the same time, battery, storage battery, which to me is really key to the system. And that was, as you can see, almost as much as the system itself. But again, you get the tax credit, and in the end, $8,500 was sort of what I spent on it. This is the span panel where there was a lot of talk in that video. I hope it wasn't super confusing, but the bottom line is that when you put in electrification and solar, you most likely will have to upgrade your panel just because you don't have enough circuits to accommodate all that electricity that's now happening because you take out the gas. In fact, I have no more gas line to my house. It's all been taken out at the street level. There's like no risk of fossil fuels coming back to my house. So the span panel is a way to not have to upgrade your panel. Usually, I'd say cost-wise about the same, 4,000-ish before for tax credit or other incentives. And there are now more incentives for this step in your electrification. But the whole point about the smart panel is that it just moves traffic more smartly. So you won't always have all circuits going. So the smart panel says, okay, the electricity is going to go to these 3 things that are running right now. No need to have all these circuits ready at, expand size-wise. You just use what you have more smartly. The mini split heat pump that you saw in the video is a ductless system. It's the simplest you can get. There's also ducted systems. Fujitsu and Mitsubishi are sort of the main brands out there right now. And essentially, you have what you see on the bottom right, this outdoor unit that takes the warmth from or coolness from the outside air and basically transfers it into your home, which is why it's more effective than, say, heating up, convection heating, warming the air or cooling the air directly. So what you'll see is this outdoor unit. You'll have to find a spot for that. And then in my case, I have 2 of these so-called air handlers. They're the indoor units that just blow out the either warm or cool air, depending on what you need at any given time. So again, here the cost is listed with the rebate wasn't huge at the time. I think there is more available now, actually. Same technology, the heat pump for the hot water heater. So it looks like the old kind of footprint is similar to the gas water heaters, but it has a heat pump built in. So the way it heats, it warms your water is similarly more efficient. And the little exhaust you see here in the photo, that just blows out the cold air because it takes in air from, in my case, the garage to take that warmth energy, if you will, and put it into my water. So again, these I think have come down in price. Cooper from Quit Carbon, thanks so much for helping answer questions. He would know more about what they currently are and what the rebates might be now. This is one you didn't see in the video because I didn't have it. That was my last frontier to get rid of my gas stove. I got an induction stove. This one is the Frigidaire Gallery series. I really like it a lot. It was really affordable, amazingly. I think there's sort of a perception out there that induction stoves are really expensive. But the part that is probably more pricey is to put in that 240-volt electrical line. Like you need a new circuit for that. And there are now rebates for that as well. The tax credits are going to be for both the stove and the electrical work, if I'm not mistaken. For me, it was a big rebate from Bayron that was available at the time because I exchanged this for gas. That's important that you go from gas to electric. So now you've seen the slide before. I want to talk a little bit about these different resources, just in which ones I have found useful, or which one you may want to call up to not get totally overwhelmed. So just off the bat, federal tax credits available for electrification and energy efficiency, 30% generally. And on top of that, there are rebates. So the resources listed here, Rewiring America and The Switch is On. Those are kind of not the sort of countrywide, the sort of big picture sites, in my estimation. They tell you about the Inflation Reduction Act and when that may be available and what will be available when it's available. So this is sort of, I would say, big picture websites. Ava Community Energy Incentives Finder. This is the East Bay Community Energy people they renamed, but this is local or regional. And what I find really neat is that you can put in your zip code, your address, your income, if it's a single family home or what it is, and it'll list everything you qualify for, from electric cars to insulation rebates. It's just the whole kitchen sink on what you could get. The PG&E and the Bayern links, what I find nice about them is that you can get one-on-one help. You can request, Bayern calls them the home energy advisor. So it's basically staff that would talk with you one-on-one and maybe guide you through stuff. They don't push you in any certain direction, but they give kind of orientation. I found that very helpful. I worked with Bayern on this. And then finally, Quit Carbon. Cooper can tell you more about that. They find not only the rebates for you, but also contractors. And they do all of this free of charge because they get a little cut from whom you might end up hiring, but no obligation at all. It's all free, just hand-holding in a way, if I would call it that.
That was just a fantastic presentation, Stephanie. So thank you very much. Everything from your garden right through to your home. And then the one thing that I don't think you covered is that you've actually had your gas shut off by PG&E, right?
Yeah. So it was very triumphant. It took a while. Like first it was cut off at, say, the stove. They actually required me to send in a photo of that pipe to be gone. But then I requested, and this is no charge, and anybody can do it from PG&E, for the gas meter and the whole pipe to be taken out. And they actually brought out like a street crew. They literally tore up the sidewalk to detach the gas. So very satisfying.
Yeah, that's the goal. And your house will also be safer. Those of you who remember that explosion in Burlingame that blew up some homes like 10 or so years ago, like Stephanie doesn't have gas lines running into her home anymore. Why don't we go? Do you want to browse the chat, or you want me to browse the chat and pull out some questions?
I have a collection of them if it's helpful.
Oh, that would be great because I have not really looked at it.
Thank you very much, Jessica. You go ahead then.
Okay, so we had one from Arpana Yadatore. She asked about the hummingbird sage. Will it do well without shade? Because she saw it in your parking strip.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I have it in a lot of places in my yard that actually like spreading. I have it both in sun and shade. It does great in sun until the heat really hits, I want to say July. And if you don't water it, then it'll just go dormant. It'll totally come back the next spring. But if you want to keep it looking a little more fresh, give it some water. In the shade, I don't even really water it. It just stays a little greener.
We had one from Esme Howard. What do you have on that trellis attached to the house?
Oh, unfortunately, it's not a native. It's a bougainvillea that I have there. But I now, and you would see this if you came out, I have a native clematis. It's deciduous, and I can't wait for it to make its way up there.
Janet Flint asked, how much do you prune your elderberry?
Every year, I try to prune it a little more up because elderberries, you could cut them way to the ground. You could make them a little bush. you can really shape them any way you want. As you saw, mine are sort of a little more like column, like vase shaped, because that fits my yard better. So I just cut the branches that go sideways. I just sort of shape it up. It's super forgiving. I usually try to do it before it leaves out, but even now, there were like just yesterday a few branches that just got so exuberant and right into the path, and I just cut it, and it'll be not mad at me. I know that.
And we have Apurva asked, did you build any protection from critters such as ground squirrels, gophers, etc.? If so, what did you use?
Luckily, I don't have any gophers. I have a squirrel that keeps burying oaks and nuts that then sprout, but it doesn't do much damage otherwise. My bigger sort of beef is with cats that poop in my yard because I have a lot of mulched areas and they think it's a great litter box, but no gophers.
And the last one I had tucked away was from Anthony Radzanowski on YouTube. He says, I want to plant an oak in my front yard. There are 6 oak trees within sight of my house. Should I plant the same variety? Because you had
I only have a close live oak. Yeah, I have two of them. So the one big tree in front and then the street tree. And I mean, it's interesting because I was talking about repetition, having plans, not a one-off. And that's for aesthetics. I think nature would probably be fine with different oaks. It's really more sort of what looks better to you. And then size, of course. So if you, the coast live oak can get pretty darn big. I mean, I know.
Fast too.
Yeah, but there's scrub and leather oaks that also have the benefits of, the keystone benefits, like a lot of caterpillars, the oak is a host plant. And so consider those. And maybe oak.
Dark green holly colored leaves of the leather oak. I have one that has a drooping habit. So it almost looks like an oak and a willow had a baby. And it just sort of sits there looking elegant and droopy.
Wow, that is so cool to know. I do not have a scrub or leather oak. I just know about them.
And then maybe also looking at what oaks are native to your area. You can find that information on Calscape. And that would probably be the best thing to do is find something that really belongs in your area so you know it's going to do well. And then look further afield if you need something of a different size.
I see a question from Robin about what was the manzanita variety?
Oh, I have so many different manzanitas. So the ones I showed in the backyard are Dr. Hurd. That's an easy one to get. And I have 3 of them in different spots, and they all have just the nicest habit. I have not even pruned them. So very sort of slow growing, neat, showy, beautiful bark. So Dr. Hurd, I can really recommend. I also have the Austin, I want to say Austin Powers, but that's not it, something Austin. That's sort of you guys know which one I'm talking about?
Austin Griffiths, isn't it?
Yes, thank you.
But Austin Powers would be good too.
I don't know what that looks like though. It might be crazy looking. Um, and in front, I have a taller one that's a Mount St. Helena. Also nice for a tree habit. I have a lot of those more ground covery ones, and there's a pretty wide variety, including the John Dowley, which if you asked me for a recommendation for lower growing one, that is probably what I'd say.
I think too, if people have questions about manzanitas, Pete Vayu is an expert on manzanitas. He grows, I think, 50 kinds and he knows everything about manzanitas. And he's got 1 or 2 actually videos on manzanitas on the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours YouTube channel. One is on pruning manzanitas and one was on selecting medium to small size manzanitas.
Yeah, yeah. And all my manzanitas, every single one is from Pete's. And it was actually funny because when I started, I didn't really know plants that well. And I had a friend who helped with the design and she was just learning. And we just said, oh, Pete, can you just bring some manzanitas? Just like later, I'm like, which one is this? So I had to, for the garden tour, I had to find out which ones they were. Yeah, endorsing.
Couple questions. So one was about the mound you put in and one was about sheet mulching. So maybe we can take the mound first. Your mound is kind of gentle, right? Like I don't really walk into your yard and think, I should got a mound there, but I did notice it when you pointed it out. Can you talk
Yeah.
about like how high your mound is, or where did you bring in soil, or did you turn over the lawn? Like how did you make your mound?
Yeah, really good question. So I also didn't mention that I sheet mulched everything. So basically, the first step was like 6,000 square feet of sheet mulching, essentially. And then my friend who helped with the design had, and I think, I don't know, American soil, rock and soil, we brought in soil. And it was actually both where the oak is in front and that mound in the back, just to, because it was like such a football field, like it was like soccer field rather, just flat. And we wanted some features. So we had the path going in, and then we mounded literally just piling a bunch of, it was not from the lawn turned over because we just sheet mulched on it. And we put soil, just mounded it. And
Mm-hmm.
and it is a gentle mound. I want to say maybe if it's 2 feet, that's a lot. But it's interesting. It really feels more like a mound because I now didn't plant on it. I have this sort of, it just evolved like that, a little sort of path going up, and with the bench, it just feels like you come to this clearing, and it's slightly mounded, but really not that much.
I love mounds and gardens. Can you talk about your sheet mulching very briefly? Like where'd you get your chips from, and did you do
Yeah,
it yourself?
absolutely. So I got all my chips at Get Chip Drop, the free service you request. And there's a bit of a wild card element. You don't know exactly when they'll bring it and what exactly it is. Comes from arborists when they have it. But I got my 2 loads of about, I want to say 20 cubic yards. They're usually larger amounts within weeks. And they're 100% free, and they were good loads. So you can put in some requests. Jessica can put something in the chat about her experience. I know she got some, you can say, I don't want XYZ and no eucalyptus or no larger pieces or whatever. They try to accommodate you. So free there. And then the rest, the cardboard was all from rolls that I got at a paper company actually, but I can put in a link that also gives a lot of sources for all of these materials like cardboard, compost, and mulch. I did put compost under the cardboard, which is optional. I got free horse manure at a stable back when I did it, but you could do it without compost.
Well, I think we should probably move on. Stephanie, it was such a great presentation, and thank you so much for doing it. I know I said I would be your buddy and chat with you, but it was just so lovely hearing you just go through the slides. I enjoyed seeing your garden. I'm in such admiration for your house.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go through the chat also, and feel free to put more questions. I'll try and answer what we haven't covered.
Okay, there's one question that I did want to respond to. Somebody asked, given climate change, should we plant local native plants or other species? And I'm not an expert on this, but my opinion is that we should just be planting our local native plants. We can't guess what's going to happen. And we have creatures right here, right now, that are depending on us to give them what they need to survive. And I think we should just be planting as many local native plants as we can at this moment.
Yeah, I would add that those are also the most successful ones. Like I had, just to give you an example, I had a desert willow, which is more like a Southern California plant, because I loved it. And I don't know if it was because it wasn't super local, but it didn't do well. I had to take it out. So yay for hyper local.
You know, one time, I want to say this, and I want to move on. I had a friend come over and he was a fantastic naturalist. And he pointed at, there was a ceanothus on my next door neighbor's yard and also a Vermontodendron. And the ceanothus was just like an airport of bees. Like there were so many insects going in and out of the ceanothus. And the Vermontodendron, there was nothing on it. And he said, like, look, this is a plant that belongs here. You know, these bees know that. That's why they're here. And the Vermontodendron, he said, um, it's a big flower. It's probably pollinated by a beetle. We might not even have this beetle here. Like it was just sitting there, not doing anything. And that was what really drove home to me the idea of really planting with local native plants. Okay, Stephanie, thank you so much. It's exciting that East Bay Mud has doubled the rebate amount for native plant gardens. It's the only water district to have done this. If you plant a native plant garden, you'll get a super rebate of $2 a square foot, which is double the standard rebate. If you plant natives, sheet mulch to remove the lawn and build healthy soil, and plant in the cool season, you can take advantage of the rain that will help plants get established. To help you do this, EdMud also has a new landscape design assistance program. Choose a designer from their list, and you'll get a 2-hour visit and custom recommendations on things like plant choice, layouts, and irrigation. Yarrow, Clarkia, and Flannelbush, there are so many favorites to choose from, and EdMud's new programs are here to help. And don't forget about mulch and compost coupons, which are available at edmud.com/mulch. EdMud says we may be out of the drought, but water-wise gardens are always in style.